Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Green Bay Packers all-time leader in rushing, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Also find our Overflow channel wherever you get your podcast. Search Packer Fan Total Access. It is February 20th. We're going to dive into several different topics here as things are starting to really pick up. We've got a third candidate that's entering his hat into the sweepstakes, become the Packers' next special teams coordinator. So we will talk about that. We'll also dive into a little bit of defensive tackle talk here with the NFL draft and take a deeper look at the offensive line, as there's been several tweets that have flown out with pressure rate and other important metrics to kind of judge the offensive line on. We'll show where they stacked up across the league and maybe what an answer might be moving forward. We've also got Micah Parsons and Zach Tom rehab updates as well, which we'll try to hit on that a little bit, give you guys an idea, a little look behind the scenes as what's going on there. Before we get into everything, if y'all would do that YouTube stuff for me, hit like, hit subscribe. If this is your first time tuning into PTA, welcome. Thank you for making us a part of your morning. We are not experts. We're not insiders. We're not media members. We're fans just like you, talking Packers on a daily basis. So if you're looking for that type of content, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you get notified every time we go live here in the future. Let's waste no time and get into it. We're on kind of a short schedule. What's up, John? I see Cannonball John in the chat. Good to see you, buddy. We got a lot going on today, so I'm going to try to fly through these topics and get everybody out of here. You guys know it's tax season. Being a business owner, boy, oh boy, it's a lot of fun. So we're going to have about 6 to 8 hours of just grinding and crunching the numbers today in that regard. But first things first, Bill Huber put an awesome article out here. I want you guys to go check it out. I think he released it was last night or yesterday around 5:38 my time, Eastern time. And there seems to be a third candidate that might be actually the favorite to get the special teams coordinator job. So let's just waste no time and get into the article. And again, you guys go give it a click. Go give this a retweet. You can find it right here on my X page as well. Bill Huber does an excellent job for SI and getting this information out to us. So here's what the article says. Tom McMahon replaced Rich Bisaccia as special teams coordinator of the Raiders in 2022. Could he replace Bisaccia again as special teams coordinator for the Green Bay Packers? Packers coach Matt LaFleur is racing to replace Bisaccia, who stepped down this week after 4 years at the helm. McMahon, who has been a coordinator since 2009. So think about that. The year before the Packers won the Super Bowl in 2010, he has actually been a coordinator that long. Tom McMahon has. Okay. He's expected to be interviewed according to a source. So again, Bill Huber always have good sources there. And he seems to think that that Tom McMahon is going to be interviewing for that job. Probably happening today, I would imagine. The fact that this went out, it may have actually already happened. But as soon as we find out who's hired, we'll do an extensive deep dive on their background and kind of give you guys that information as well. What's up, Mike? See Mike in the chat. Thank you, buddy. All right. With the veteran pool severely depleted given the late stage of the hiring cycle, McMahon stands almost alone among the remaining candidates because of his experience. McMahon was the outside linebackers and special teams coach at Louisville in 2006 when new defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon was a graduate assistant. That's a very interesting tie there, right? In 2007, both coaches were hired by the Atlanta Falcons, with McMahon an assistant special teams coach under coordinator Jerry Rosberg. In 2008, the Falcons had a new coordinator but kept McMahon. In 2009, McMahon was hired as special teams coordinator for the St. Louis Rams. That's how long ago this was, the St. Louis Rams. Feels like a lifetime ago. He's been a coordinator ever since, including 2012 with the Kansas City Chiefs, 2013 through 2017 with the Colts, 18 through 21 with the Broncos, and then 22 through November of 25 with Las Vegas. He was fired at midseason by then Raiders coach Pete Carroll after a block punt late. I don't mean to laugh, but oh boy, the memories of getting punts blocked. When was the last time we actually had a punt blocked? It's been a long time, right? Again, that's one aspect of Rich Bisaccia I don't think people appreciated is the catastrophic stuff like that. He definitely improved on it. Didn't mean he was perfect. Didn't mean we still didn't miss kicks and everything in between. But I couldn't tell you the last time we've had a punt blocked. That's wild. So anyway, that's why he was essentially fired at the midseason when that punt got blocked. They said late in the third quarter led to the decisive points in a 10-7 loss to the Broncos. McMahon isn't the only candidate, as Packers on SI reported. The team is expected to interview 2 experienced coordinators, and Cameron Achord. We actually talked about him yesterday. You guys can go check that out. I'll try to attach the video to the backside of this one. If not, just scroll down the videos. You'll see it from yesterday. And 1 former Packers assistant and former NFL linebacker, Kyle Wilber. More will be interviewed. So evidently Bill's got a source that's saying there's going to be more candidates. This isn't going to be the only 3 candidates. So we shall see. He goes on to say coaching philosophy. LaFleur loves to use the word strain in terms of wanting his players to play through the echo of the whistle. He'll find a kindred spirit when he interviews McMahon. Quote, strain is going to be our top word from the standpoint of if you're straining, every single player straining, that takes care of the compete. That takes care of effort, McMahon said upon joining the Raiders in 2022. Quote, what you want in terms around this league to say, hey, look, that's a team that's going to strain. So talking about playing through the whistle, effort, all that stuff, right? He goes on to say all of those things, tackling, effort, compete, blocking, they come down to one word, and that's strain. And we're going to outstrain people. And Bisaccia did a good job of establishing that. We're not going to lose that. We're going to out-practice people. But it's going to come down to the word strain. So this is him obviously talking to the Raiders organization, his players, after Rich Bisaccia left for Green Bay. And I think they actually let him go before Green Bay hired him. You guys can go do your own research there. But in the Packers on SI NFL special teams rankings, which focus mostly on field position gained and lost on kickoffs and punts, the Raiders finished 24th in 2025, but were second in 2024 and fourth in 2023. In Rick Gosselin's more expansive special teams rankings, the Broncos were below average all 4 seasons. By special teams DVOA, the Raiders were 28th in 2025, 17th in 2024, 13th in 2023, and 12th in 2022. The Broncos were 30th in McMahon's final year with Denver in 2021. So if I'm reading that correctly, that would kind of suggest that things have gotten worse since he took over with the Raiders of special teams. Now, again, roster build matters. I can't help but wonder that maybe as the organization changed, right, with I'm sure they got new GMs and everything in between, I wonder if they changed their philosophy on how they're building their special teams aspect of their roster. Could be, right? He goes on to say the biggest philosophy I have in half-court offense and full-court defense, he said before his first season in Denver. When his kicker was Brandon McManus, offensively from a return standpoint, we want to give our offense a half-court to work with. We want to give our defense a full court. In essence, what we're really trying to do is field position. If we get a turnover, for example, we don't call it a turnover on our special teams. We call it points. Any turnover on special teams because of the ball being punted 50 yards or taken 60 yards when you get a turnover, it's already in field goal range. We call it points. All we're trying to do is half-court offense and full-court defense and control field position. So you can kind of see his whole process, his whole mindset with Tom McMahon, who, like I said, if you guys are just tuning in right now, coming in a little late, we've got a third candidate that's entered into the conversation here, Tom McMahon, former special teams coordinator for the Raiders. What you're finding out here is he's a guy that preaches field position, field position, field position. Everybody kind of looks at special teams a little bit different, I believe. When I talk about Rich Bisaccia made the special teams better when he got here, and I always add the caveat that he was not perfect. He was nowhere near perfect. Nobody's saying that. But special teams before he got here were punts getting blocked, right? Bad snaps, just crucial mistakes like that. Huge kick returns were another thing, right? I remember before Rich got here, it just seemed like, of course, we're playing with our backs against the wall because they had a huge kick return, right? And sometimes the defense gets blamed a little bit more than anyone else because they end up giving up points. And you look at the end of the game and go, how did we give up 32 points? How did we give up 28 points? And when you truly dive into it, it's like, wow, the special teams gave up 2 huge kick returns here. I feel like that aspect got better. I feel like the punting got way better. Now, people say, well, that's just Daniel Whalen. Okay. If you're going to say it's just Daniel Whalen, then if you're not going to give the special teams coordinator praise for when a player takes a step in the right direction, whether it's a kicker or a punter, then we can't criticize them when a kick gets blocked, when a kick gets missed, right? So it goes kind of hand in hand there. So I credit Bisaccia a lot to what Daniel Whelan was able to do as a punter. And you also got to credit Goody too, that he found Whelan. So again, I think these are all things that come into consideration when you're talking about the global picture, if you will, when it comes to special teams and other aspects of the team. But I think that field position, that's going to be an interesting kind of, you guys correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Let me know right here, comment right here. I don't remember Bisaccia preaching field position too much. I don't remember that being kind of the focal point, although we know it's important. What I worry about here is, okay, if we put more focus on just the field position, now all of a sudden are the other things going to become a problem if you go with the Tom McMahon? I'm going to be honest, completely transparent. I try to be as straightforward as I can on this show without depressing anyone. I'm not a big Tom McMahon guy. Now, he has more experience than everybody else, and that's important, but I think I would go the New England Patriots route and go with Anchor. That would be my guy. Because the other two, you'll notice here too, it seems like that Matt LaFleur, Brian Gutekunst, and our boy Ed Policy, they're really, really zeroing in on everybody from Bisaccia's coaching tree, and that's interesting, seeing that how much the fans, didn't like Bisaccia. It's a very, very interesting take. So he goes on to say, "Cam McMahon, be Mr. Fix It." It's a great article. You guys go check it out. And finish reading it again. That was Bill Huber that tweeted that article out. It's over at si.com. Real easy read. I love the fact that Bill Huber, Wendell Ferreira, all these guys, Justin Malo, everybody in between, they just get straight to the point with their articles, and that's why we try to promote them on this particular program. So if you guys are watching this video back later, let us know in the comments, how do you feel about Tom McMahon? Do you think he is the guy for the job? Maybe you feel totally opposite from me, and you don't like the other two candidates, and this is your guy. Let us know which one would be your choice. Maybe there's another candidate that you've thought about this entire time as well. Mention them in the comments also. And make sure you hit that like button for us. Hit subscribe. Click the bell icon so you catch all the live streams here in the future. All right, let's see what the chat's doing in here. I see everybody following in now, man. I had to throw the stream together last second. It's been busy around here around the Bailey Ranch, so we're trying to get all kinds of stuff taking care of today. Let's see what Mark says here in the chat. Our end of the roster guys need to be special teams players who could play a bit of offense and defense. Now, our end of roster guys are offense/defensive players who could play a bit of special teams. I think that's very well said, Mark. Very, very well said there, sir. That's kind of how I look at it too. And some teams, they'll put a lot more emphasis, right? A lot more emphasis on special teams on the backside of the roster. It seems like with the Packers, it's more of, can they contribute on offense and defense on the back end, and then whoever's the best of the remaining will throw them on special teams. So hopefully that does shift a little bit here in the future. So we'll see. All right, let's move on to a little draft talk, if that's all right with you guys. Now, we always talk about 3-tech, right? We are constantly talking about 3-tech. And if you guys are new here, what we mean by 3-tech, it's really, really simple. You've got gap alignment. When you hear us say 3-tech, think B gap. When you hear us say 1-tech, think A gap, okay? So when we say 3-tech, we're talking about a B to C gap penetrator on the interior of the defensive line, if that makes sense. And then with a 1-tech or a nose, he's that guy holding the point of attack, right? Either playing 0-tech, shade, or 1, like right there in the mix, looking to intentionally tie up a double team block and kind of anchor the run defense, okay? So when we say 3-tech, it's a tier 1 position of importance. What we're talking about is creating pressure opposite your best edge rusher. So you want a 3-tech that can warrant a double team in a perfect scenario, perfect world, and then you want an edge defender that's going to warrant a double team as well, right? So you've got Micah Parsons on one side. We need that 3-tech. Now, some people believe it's Devontae Wyatt, and I can respect that. Listen, he was one of my favorite players coming out in the draft too. Our board suggested it was a great pick. It was like, okay, well, we're picking here. Now, the back half of the first round, you can't expect to get a slam dunk every time. We've had, actually, it seems like, more success out of the second round than we have the first round, at least recently, I believe. I feel comfortable saying that. But when you looked at the defensive tackle, we took Devontae Wyatt. Every player has strengths and weaknesses. You've got some of those players that are at the top of the list where you go, wow, they really flash. They really pop. They bring a lot to the table, maybe more so than those back of the first round guys, right? So what we did was we compiled a bunch of information here together from Football Insights. You guys make sure you go give them a follow at @FBall_insights. And we're going to kind of look at the past draft classes, okay? All the way, really, it's all the way back to 2019. We won't go back too far there. Maybe we can kind of see who were the slam dunk picks and this and that. But you've got what we call a heat map. I believe that's what this is called, right? And what it's going to show is A gap alignment, B gap alignment, and over tackle, okay? So that's going to show you where they're aligning at, whether they're a nose or a 3-tech, or someone who's a little more versatile, they can kick out to over the tackle with a 4-eye or a 5-tech, right? And then we're going to talk about run defense, which is stop percentage, okay, run stop rate. And then we're going to talk about pass rush, which is pass rush win rate and pressure percentage, okay? And I'm trying to see missed tackles is the other thing there as well. So you've got a missed tackle percentage and run defense as well. So you got 4 metrics spread out over 2 aspects of playing defensive tackle in the NFL, which is run defense is pass rush, okay? So let's kind of go back in time first, okay? Let's go back, and let's do it recently. Let's go back to 2025. You'll notice on the heat map here, if you guys can see it, I'll try to zoom in a touch. I apologize if it's a little bit hard to read. That's probably a little bit better. So in 2025, who were the best defensive tackles? Mason Graham was at the top of the list. You'll notice his stop percentage, 11.4%. That's lit up, dark green. You've got missed tackle was only 5.9%. It's fairly dark green, but not the darkest of the green, right? Pass rush win rate was 14% for Mason Graham. And then the pressure percentage was 10.3%. What you're looking for is a player that's all green across the board here on this heat map, right? Now, if you get someone who maybe isn't necessarily all green, but it's there's no red involved, that tells you they're probably a pretty balanced player, right? You don't feel like they have any glaring issues here. So Mason Graham, hands down, was the best defensive tackle according to these metrics. Now, he lined up in the B gap 77% of the time. I remember people saying Mason Graham's a nose, Mason Graham's a nose. And I'm like, why are you saying he's a nose just because of his body build? Guys, they said the same thing about T'Vondre Sweat. And he's had some injuries, but he started off really strong, right? So you can't just look at someone's build and say, nope, they're a nose, right? You got to look in terms of deployment and alignment. The same thing was said about Kenneth Grant. Now, Kenneth Grant didn't have as good of a year as Mason Graham. Obviously, they were teammates out of Michigan. So what you're seeing, though, is in the A gap, Kenneth Grant was there 29% of the time. What do we always say? 3-tech is more important than nose because you're going to be in nickel defense, your nickel 4-2-5 or nickel 2-4-5 if we go back to the 34 defense. Spoiler alert, it's the same thing, okay? It is what it is. They're edge defenders. They're not defensive linemen or outside linebackers. Actually, they're edge defenders. But with like Kenneth Grant, the reason he only had less than 30% snaps at the A gap and his teammate Mason Graham only had 7 is because Kenneth Grant was playing nose in their base defense, right? Which means he still played in the B gap 70% of the time. So when we say we need a 3-tech and people go, oh, he's not a 3-tech. He's not a 3-tech. Okay, so it's kind of like the Lucas Van Ness thing. He never started a game. Did you even do any research and look at how they play their seniors in Iowa? Like the reason he didn't start is because they've got a rule that their seniors play. Their seniors start. They would start. They'd come immediately out. LVM will go in, right? So it's important to understand why these guys have the number of snaps that they do at each particular gap assignment. So anyway, Kenneth Grant, not as good here, right? When you look at this across the board, what you're seeing is 7.3% stop rate in the run game, okay? So even though he played 29% of the snaps in the A gap, he was their anchor, he was their defensive tackle, his stop rate was only 7.3%. Not a good look, right? Now, he's taking on double teams most likely. Kobe Wooden had a bunch of stops last year. His stop rate was pretty darn good. We need to see what his actual stop rate was because it was really impressive. That's one of the aspects of Kobe Wooden that I was like, yeah, he impressed me at defensive tackle at nose. When you look at his missed tackle percentage, however, with Kenneth Grant, it was only 2.9%. So that was great. So again, his run stop rate was low. His missed tackle rate was great, right? So what's that tell you? Probably his gap integrity, right, was what was limiting him, maybe getting blown off the ball and occupying those double teams was limiting him from getting a higher stop rate as opposed to the fact that he may be missing tackles, which was not the case, right? But again, you've got one in the light red, one in the darkish green, and then you get the pass rush. What do you got here? His win rate was 9.1%. His pressure percentage was 8.8%. Both of those are in the light pink. So when you look at the heat map, that would suggest Kenneth Grant is not going to be a great football player, right? He does a few things good. You've got some tools and some size to work with. He played at a big program. Those things matter. But if you had to pick between Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, you would go with Mason Graham. Now, a deciding factor for me is the fact that Mason Graham played more 3-tech than Kenneth Grant, right? And again, that's more important in the league because these nose tackles are going to be taking on double teams. You're already winning a +1 hat count. You better have somebody at 3-tech who can win their battles both in the run and the pass. Walter Nolan, you guys know, was my draft crush last year. Look at the heat map. Stop rate, 10.9%. Missed tackle rate, 3.1%. Both of them in the dark green, right? And then you jump over to pass rush. He had a 10.1% pass rush win rate and then a 9.5% pressure rate. None of those are in the green. Neither of those are in the green. But you see there's no red across the board. He's a more balanced defensive lineman, and he's going to play 3-tech, right? He was my draft crush. He ended up having a great year. I think he played 140 snaps. He got hurt, but he was grading out in the 70s according to PFF, so that ended up being a hit. There were a lot of people late in the draft. I caught some heat because I said Walter Nolan was my guy personally when I watched the tape. There were people going, Derek Harmon's way better. Derek Harmon's way better. Derek Harmon last year, his stop rate was 6.5%. His missed tackle percentage was 15.4%. Guys, he was cheeks in the run game. Well, we don't need a run. We don't need a run defender. We need a pass rusher. Okay, 12.3% win percentage and 11% pressure rate. That's good numbers. Those are great numbers, right? We're all in agreement. But why does Derek Harmon struggle in the run game? Derek Harmon, in my opinion, feels like Devontae Wyatt. Solid pass rusher, not so good against the run. Now, if we go back to Devontae Wyatt's year, there were only 2 defensive linemen listed here in 2022 that they've got listed, okay? So when you look at it, Wyatt actually played the B gap 63% of the time. The other one was his teammate, Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis was ranked higher than Wyatt, okay, obviously, and he was a physical freak. When you look at Jordan Davis, run stopper, 9.5% and 5.1% in the run metrics, okay, and stop and miss tackle rate. When you go to the pass rush side, though, Jordan Davis, 4.9% win rate, 5% pressure percentage. That is absolute cheeks. Now, Jordan Davis has gone on to be a pretty good football player with Philadelphia. I haven't looked at his PFF grades, but he's definitely played a role in that defense. But again, who is their main guy? It's Jalen Carter, right? Well, Jalen Carter is their 3-tech. So this is why it's more important. They went back the very next year and got Jalen Carter. So let's bounce back to 2023. Jalen Carter across the board, 11.8% stop rate. His missed tackle percentage was 13%. We know he kind of plays a little bit reckless and getting after the quarterback, but he can kind of afford to do that at 14.8% win rate, 10.9% pressure percentage. Okay. Now back down to Wyatt. Wyatt is the perfect example. He was the better defensive lineman on our board, even for me, even better than Jordan Davis from a personal standpoint, because Jordan Davis was a nose and Devontae Wyatt was a 3-tech. And when you look at Devontae Wyatt, there was only one thing in the green, and that was missed tackle percentage. Well, that's something he struggled with in Green Bay. So when he struggled with that year 1, it's like, okay, I think he'll figure that out. He did kind of figure it out this year, but his run defense grade is horrible, right? His stop percentage was only 8.7% at Georgia. That's very, very, very light green, almost in the white, almost kind of neutral, right? His win rate in pass rush was 10.1%. His pass rush win rate was 9.7%. So Devontae Wyatt is like a good, safe pick. Well, guess what you get with good, safe picks? When you go safe, right, you're going to get a player that has a high floor but a low ceiling. And when you look at Devontae Wyatt and how he's performed, right, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's got a weak spot to his game, and that's run defense. He's got a strong point where he's a very good pass rusher. It's exactly what we got with Devontae Wyatt. So I like to kind of go back in time and look at that. Now, let's fast forward a touch to this year and see who kind of, well, let me show you somebody who was all in the green. Quinnen Williams that the Cowboys just traded draft picks for and got down in Dallas. Guys, that you guys heard me when that broke. People were raking them over the coat. They let Micah go and got Quinnen Williams. I was like, yeah, I would not have let Micah go, but Quinnen Williams is a hell of a get. He's a great defensive tackle, right? He is green across the board, 13.3 and 2.7 in terms of his run stop rate's 13.3%. His missed tackle rate is 2.7%. His pass rush win rate, 15.8%. And his pressure percentage was 14.5%. Slam dunk, top 5 pick, run the card. That's your guy. You've got to be drafting extremely high to get those type of guys, right? And I don't know where Quinnen Williams went, but if he went outside of the top 10, that is extremely, extremely rare, right? So, again, looking at some of these players, it's fun to go back and say, okay, how did they actually stack up, right? How did they actually stack up in the league? Now, when we go to this year's draft, What does the defensive tackle class look like? One of the things that we keep talking about is it just looks like defensive tackle, unless one of these upper echelon guys fall in our lap, we're not going to be able to get one at 52. Okay. And you can kind of see it comparatively speaking to the rest of the drafts across the board, in recent history. They've got Peter Woods at the top of the list here. We've actually got Peter Woods listed as our third best defensive tackle. Our defensive tackles on our PTA big board, as it sits today on February the 20th, and this will change. We've got McDonald, Caleb Banks, Peter Woods, Kristen Miller, Lee Hunter, Darrell Jackson, and then Dominic Orange. Okay. They've got Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, McDonald, Caden McDonald, I think's his name, Lee Hunter, and then Kristen Miller. Okay. So we're much higher on Kristen Miller than they are here if these are in a particular ranking. Now, what do these guys do well? First of all, when you look at Peter Woods' stop percentage, 11.3%. His missed tackle rate, 13.5%. That's kind of Jekyll and Hyde. He's got a high stop rate, but he's going to miss a lot of tackles. Probably going to see a lot of flash plays, right? Pass rush win rate, 11.4%. His pressure percentage is 7.1%. Okay, so this is a guy, Peter, I know some people love Peter Woods. He was down on our board, and I can't remember who it was, kept reaching out to me and going, Peter Woods is too low. Peter Woods is too low. He's going to be a first-round pick. Daniel Jeremiah had him as an early second-round pick. We weren't as big on him, and this is one of the reasons why I'm sure it shook out on our board the way it did, even though he still lands in the 31 spot. I don't see him as the top defensive tackle because it's too inconsistent. It doesn't mean he won't play better when he gets to the National Football League, but when you look at his body of work as a whole, and you kind of take all metrics into consideration, you look at our board and how it shook out, that has no ties to these metrics whatsoever. You see a player that's 1 second he's great in the run, the next second he's bad. 1 second he's great in the pass rush, next second he's bad. He played for Clemson. When was the last time a Clemson defensive lineman worked out, right? You see down here, the only one on this list, the short list, recently in 2023 was Breesy. I don't know how Breesy's playing. Maybe he's having a great year, but that's really the only one that's there. He had 3 of the 4 in the green, unlike only 2 of the 4 in the green for our boy Peter Woods. Now you go on down the list, you got 2 more Clemson guys. Christian Wilkins, he can't get a job right now because he's acting like a freaking weirdo in the locker room and kissing on guys and making them feel uncomfortable and stuff. You guys do your own research there. That's why anytime somebody brings up Christian Wilkins to me, I'm like, do we want that locker room headache? They run him out of everywhere he goes. They run him out of that place. Like, there's a reason Miami didn't keep him. And then I think he went to the Raiders. He was too weird for the Raiders. And we've seen that locker room. They'll, run around, drinking and smoking cigars in the locker room and it looks like a party over there, even though they haven't won a damn thing in how long. He wasn't even good enough for their locker room. So it is what it is there, right? DeMarcus Lawrence as well. I think that's DeMarcus Lawrence Dexter Lawrence was it? I'm sorry. Dexter Lawrence. Now, Dexter Lawrence looked like a much better prospect here. And I think, didn't he end up, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I think he ended up with the Giants, and he's a solid football player, right? I'm almost positive he ended up with the New York Giants. Somebody post right here, comment, and let us know in the chat. I'm pretty sure he did. But Dexter Lawrence was solid across the board. 8.7, 1.1, 12.1, 12.2. In the green, 3 of those. The 4th is a light green, but definitely nowhere near the red. So Dexter Lawrence obviously was a solid get there. So you're looking for guys who are going to be steady across the board. There you see Jerry Simmons, I think that's his name, Jerry Simmons. I think he ended up going to Tennessee to the Titans, and he's been kind of an anchor for them for a long time if he's still with them. Maybe he's been traded since then, but he was green across the board as well. So, again, when you look at the defensive tackle position, this is what I'm talking about. Just because 3-tech is important doesn't mean you reach on your board. They're not a quarterback. Quarterback is the only position in the NFL draft where you're willing, in my opinion, to go down a tier to reach because it's that important of a position, right? That's the reason Greg Cosell says every spring there's 2 drafts. There's the NFL draft and there's the quarterback draft. Quarterbacks are treated way different than every other player in the draft, if that makes sense. So that's just kind of a quick look at those defensive tackles. I also included here our draft board and how everybody shook up. Like when you look at how this shakes out here, you can see they got Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolan. We have Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan was my guy. And obviously all these guys are off to a solid start. You can see the PFF grade there for Walter Nolan, 74.1 as a rookie. If he stays healthy, guys, he is going to be a dog. Now, Clayton, why were you so high on him? Because of the people I respect. First of all, he had an opportunity to go to the Senior Bowl. He got a 5-point bonus. He dominated at the Senior Bowl. Okay, check the box. Greg Cosell, He watched the tape and said, this is the best defensive tackle in the entire draft. We gave him a 7-point bonus because of that. His final grade ended up being a 19.9. Lo and behold, he ends up being a 74.1 according to PFF in terms of grades. Mason Graham caught a little heat. There's some people that didn't like Mason Graham as much as I did. He was big on our board because of the consensus big board, the PFF big board. He was a top-graded defensive tackle. Greg Cosell did not like him as much as he did Walter Nolan. Now, he didn't say Mason Graham's going to be a bad football player. He spoke positive about him. That's why he only got a 1-point bonus, okay? But he gushed over Walter Nolan, absolutely gushed over him, right? So he nailed it. 74.1 for Walter Nolan, 68.7 for Mason Graham in terms of PFF their rookie year. And in the 2026 class, you can kind of see, I've got those there so you can compare them really, really closely. If you guys want to know where you can find this, it's in our Patreon group, patreon.com/Packer fan total access. It's the best way to support what we do here at PTA. So we got the 2026 class lined up in there for you guys as well. And I just want to throw this out there that Jordan Reed over on X actually tweeted out, Kristen Miller, interior defensive lineman, Georgia 6'4", 310, quick-handed and powerful interior player. Scheme only allowed him to show flashes as a true penetrator. Prospect with early starter potential that's likely to go in round 2. So somebody asked me yesterday on Twitter, I should have screenshotted that tweet. They said, who would you be willing to trade up for in this draft? And Kristen Miller was one of those players. What I tried to give him was 3 players I'd be willing to trade up for into the bottom or the back side of the first round, or in the early part of the second round. So I gave 3 players at each. Kristen Miller was one of those. Again, I have no reason to believe that Kristen Miller is going to be as good as Walter Nolan. So don't take this as Clayton saying that's this year's Walter Nolan. That's not what I'm saying. There is no Walter Nolan this year, okay? But when you look at it, Kristen Miller has as good a shot as anybody in here. And to me, I think you got a better chance of getting him in the second round if you're willing to trade up. And unless he falls in your lap, I do not see him falling in our lap at 52, though. So Holmes re-upped his membership here on YouTube. Appreciate you, Holmes. You're the man. So there you go, guys. That's just a quick deep dive into the defensive tackles, both past and present, in terms of this year's draft. Let me know in the comments, how do you feel about this year's class and how everything kind of shook up from past year's classes? Do you think we nailed it? Do you think we were off on 1 or 2 players? Is there a player that maybe we didn't mention that was a lower draft steal? Let us know that in the comments as well. Make sure you hit like for us, hit subscribe, click the bell icon as well. All right, let's move it along, guys. I want to talk a little offensive line here. I'm going to try not to get negative. I try to stay positive on the show, but we've got to identify the problems. Obviously, if we're truly talking about what's actually happening on the field, what's actually happening with the Packers, I think it's very, very important to make sure that we're being accurate, to make sure that we're being honest and forthcoming in that regard. When it comes to offensive line last year, it was cheeks. I mean, it was. I hesitate to say it, but I also can understand if someone would go to the extent of saying it was historically bad for the Packers. When was the last time? Think about this, guys. When was the last time our offensive line was that bad? And I know injuries played a role, but injuries didn't play as much of a role as other aspects of our team. Yes, we lost our starting center on down into the season, right? I got you. I understand. But when you look at like what Matt LaFleur was able to do with this wide receiver core with Christian Watson missing until November, right? We lose Jaden Reed in week 2. You end up losing Tucker Kraft at tight end. Yet somehow, some way, Matt LaFleur ends up with a top 5 passing offense, right? While the offensive line's been bad, we were able to overcome that. But the reason that the offensive line struggled so bad is because we took 2 huge swings in the offseason, and Goody missed on both of them as it sits today. This is where people comment and go, you can't judge a draft pick after the first year. I completely understand that. I get you, and I agree. Nobody's saying Anthony Belton's a bust. What we are saying, though, and what you're refusing to acknowledge, is that Anthony Belton was a bad football player last year. Then the conversation steers towards, well, he was playing out of position. Okay. And let me guess, that's Matt LaFleur's fault, right? And that's exactly where they're trying to steer the conversation, is Matt LaFleur played him at the wrong position. Okay. Before Matt LaFleur got here, long before Matt LaFleur got here, this was an issue. If you don't believe me, go ask Brian Bulaga. Okay. Now, so why was it an issue before? You might be asking. This is how the Packers front office operates. Draft the best player and then put them at whatever position you need to put them at. We've seen it with safeties and cornerbacks Demarius Randall and others, right? Just bouncing guys back and we're trying to get them play. We've seen it with Javon Bullard, right? You drafted him at safety, you played him at safety, then you try to settle in at nickelback. And okay, great. Now he's our nickelback. That's awesome. Moving forward, let's leave him there. Don't rotate him out in base packages. Don't put him back to safety in base packages, right? Like, let these guys settle in and get comfortable into a spot. And if that's not enough evidence of this predates Matt LaFleur, we always make a comment. We reference a comment, I should say, that Josh Sitton said years ago, where he said, if you guys want to know how hard it is to go from playing left side of the offensive line to playing right side of the offensive line, when you go home tonight, try wiping your ass with the opposite hand. That's what he said, right? That's the famous quote. He's the first person I ever heard say that. Now, maybe he heard it from Coach Campy or whoever, but Brian Bulaga's been outspoken talking about, moving back and forth is difficult. And this is something that Green Bay's done for a while. They drafted Bulaga, who was a tackle, tried to play him at guard on the opposite side, and then he ended up settling in at tackle on the opposite side of what he played in college, if I'm remembering correctly, and kind of hearing his journey through that whole thing was like, yeah, I couldn't play guard. They kept trying to play me at guard, and it's just I was not a guard. I was a tackle, right? Same thing happens with guards that they might try to have to play at tackle. Now, it's usually the opposite. It's usually tackles they draft and try to play them at guard. I can handle playing a tackle at guard. What I can't handle is taking a left tackle who played left tackle his entire career, high school and college, and then going, you know what? You're going to play. Not only are you going to not play tackle, you're going to play guard, but you're going to play it on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. What are we doing? What are we doing? Well, you got to have versatility because injuries happen. That's true. But how about you just settle on, here's our backup right side lineman, here's our backup left side lineman. That way you don't have to put all that on those guys, right? So, again, I'm going to get off my soapbox. That's the first thing that comes to mind when we're talking offensive line and why it struggled. Like, why can't we let these guys get settled in? I get you. I got all that. With Anthony Belton, it's the same story. It's the same story. You got a guy that you drafted that played left tackle at NC State. Early, they tried to play him at right tackle, and then they settled him in at right guard, and he was one of the worst right guards in the entire league. You don't believe me? Look at these numbers right here, okay? I'm going to try to zoom in. It may be hard to see this screenshot. See if we can get it just right. That's about as good as I can do. Look for the red in the lower right. So what this is, these metrics, okay, are pressure rate by left guards and right guards across the league. Dead last at right guard was Anthony Belton. Guys, he gave up 8.9% pressure rate. That was worst in the league. Worst in the league, okay? Left guard, you're probably asking, how did Aaron Banks do? Aaron Banks was 28th at 6.44. Now, why am I pointing this out? We went into last offseason, and we were all saying we have got to upgrade the offensive line. Has to happen. We got our butts kicked in the trenches against the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoffs. We got to get better in offensive line. Goody agreed. But his answer to the question, his answer to the problem was, I'm going to go pay Jordan Morgan $77 million on a 4-year deal, and I'm going to use a second-round pick on Anthony Belton, who's a left tackle, and it just so happens he ends up settling in at right guard. After, I might add, you tried to force Jordan Morgan to be your right guard all year long. Jordan Morgan, once again, is a left tackle that you tried to make play right guard. What are we doing? How many times are we going to do this and it not work? How many players are going to speak out that they don't like it? Like your Josh Sittons, like your Brian Bulagas, right? Now, again, those guys didn't play under Matt LaFleur. This is a systemic thing within the Packers organization that I used to hear fans say, again, I don't want to come across as negative. I hate having these conversations. I hate it. We used to hear fans say that Goody has to be the smartest guy in the room, right? That he's, it's kind of like, that's why him and Aaron Rodgers clash, because Aaron Rodgers definitely has to be the smartest guy in the room, and so does Goody, so that's just never going to work, right? They both got ideas. They disagree. One's a 4-time MVP Super Bowl champion. The other is one of the top 32 human beings on the face of the earth to be qualified to run an organization. I don't say that tongue-in-cheek. I think Goody is a good general manager. I want to be very clear. I just don't think he's great, and he's damn sure not elite. So identifying quarterbacks, boy, oh boy, has this organization nailed that in the past, right? Jordan Love, they did it again. Aaron Rodgers, they did it when they had Favre. Favre all the way back to Ron Wolf, the huevos you have to trade a first-round pick for a second-round draft choice in Atlanta, who they said missed the team photo because he was drunk and hung over. He was 30 pounds overweight when he gets to Green Bay. And that's the guy I want to give a first-round pick for, because he knew how to identify talent. Brett Favre goes on to win you a Super Bowl, 3-time MVP, and obviously the rest is history. They know how to identify quarterbacks. I think they know how to identify good offensive linemen. The problem is they're saying, it's almost like they're looking at offensive line like they're not looking at tackles, guards, or centers. They're just going, who's the better offensive line in general, and we'll play them wherever we need to play them. That's got to change, man. It's got to. And I'll meet in the middle. I'm not saying it's got to change completely. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be able to kick somebody from tackle to guard. I'm simply saying, can we at least keep them on their natural side of the line of scrimmage? Because Zach Tom can play anywhere on this offensive line. He's been very vocal saying, yeah, that's something that's never bothered me. I've just been able to transfer everything right over to the opposite side. That is rare, guys. That's really, really rare. So, again, that's what was wrong with the offensive line this year. You're probably going, well, what about center, Clayton? What about center? Well, Elton Jenkins was hurt. When Elton Jenkins was healthy, guys, he comes in the 19 spot at 3.23%. Now, Elton Jenkins, cap hit this year, is scheduled to be $24.8 million against the cap. Aaron Banks is scheduled to be $24.8 million against the cap. If we go out there this year and we say Aaron Banks is our starting left guard and Elton Jenkins is our starting center, this is on Brian Gutekunst. That is Brian Gutekunst saying, I refuse to acknowledge my mistakes, because I'm telling you, that was cheeks. Now, I don't think both, maybe not even either of those guys will play on those cap numbers. I'm just as concerned and nervous if we just restructure Aaron Banks, not including with a pay cut, just restructure and kick the can down the road. I'm going to be equally angry as if they just left it alone, because everything is screaming this was a miss. Had somebody on Twitter say nobody was saying a miss when they signed him. Where were you? I can pull the receipts on Twitter. Everybody was going, holy overpay here. We were listed as dead last in terms of free agent signing rankings amongst all publications that I've seen, because everybody's going, not sure why you overpaid for Aaron Banks, not sure why you went and got Nate Hobbs at the price you did too, right? Because you already got a slot corner, essentially. You're good there. Why are you going to get another slot corner? Once again, even outside of the offensive line room, what did we do with Nate Hobbs? We took a slot cornerback and made him an outside corner. This is an organizational thing. This is not a Matt LaFleur thing. And it's driving me absolutely insane. So another quick little tweet here from Mike Clay. Mike Clay says here in this tweet, he says, I'm still tidying this up, but there's a current look at each NFL team's offensive lines with unrestricted free agent removed. Color coding is green, good to red, not a starter. Had to use a few fill-ins for now, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's early days. It's early days, but feel free to yell if you see anything egregious. I love when people tweet like that too. Like, hey, man, I could have made a mistake. We try to operate this show that way as well. Is like we make mistakes all the time. You guys correct us in the chat. That way we get it corrected in real time, right? So when you look at the offensive line rankings and everything, it's going to be hard to see the names. I did the best I could here with this screen grab, but right here, you see Jordan Morgan, Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Anthony Belton, Zach Tom. That's your projected lineup. Jordan Morgan's in the white, okay, so it's not saying he's good or bad. Starting at left guard, dark red, Aaron Banks. Center, Elton Jenkins, dark red. Anthony Belton, right guard, dark red. And then Zach Tom, the darkest green you can find on the board, right? He's a stud. He's saying that ranks us 21st amongst offensive linemen going into the offseason. Again, if we march this offensive line out there, you're not going to hear me going, all right, guys, we're winning the Super Bowl. That window's wide open. If we try to go back and do the same exact thing we did last year, and I know the argument is, well, Elton Jenkins will be healthy this time, Clayton. Elton Jenkins was the 19th best center in terms of pressure rate, which is supposed to be his strength, by the way, is pass blocking. He was 19th best last year in pressure rate allowed. That was when he was healthy. So, no, I can't be sold on that right now. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe they'll march this out and they're all in the green next year. I hope it happens. I hope I am wrong. But it would be malpractice to just ignore this and go, la, 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 everything's okay. Let's just move forward. Everything's fine. Can't have it. Can't allow it to happen, man. Can't do it. And that's a little bit better image there. I should have showed that to you guys. I apologize. Should have scrolled on down, but you can see it here. Jordan Morgan in the white, Aaron Banks, Elton Jenkins, Anthony Belton in the dark red, and then Zach Tom in the green, ranked 21st. Okay. So who has the best offensive line going in here? This is interesting, right? Look at Philadelphia. Philadelphia is pretty solid. Both tackles. In a perfect world for your boy Clayton here, you guys know how I talk about tackle tier 1, center tier 2. I would like to see the greens be tackle, center. And the guards just don't be horrible. And if they are horrible, you better not be overpaying them. That's the whole point here. If you're going to have a player of Aaron Banks' caliber and in terms of how he played last year, why not pay somebody $2 million? You can get that red. We got that red at home, Bobby. Timothy, we got that red at home. You can pay $2 million to be in the red. You're talking about $24.8 million and $24.8 million. So you're talking about, I'm no mathematician, but what is that? 24 and 24 is 48. Let's call it 40. Let's call it 50 million. $50 million in cap space tied up in two of the worst players at guard and center, according to pressure rate, which is supposed to be what they're good at. Man, that is a tough sell, man. That's a tough sell for me. So let's see what the chat says here. Holmes says they better restructure Jenkins as well. And that's the thing. Even with the restructures, Holmes, it better have a pay cut for me, man. Because, restructure means exactly what it sounds like. You restructure the contract. You can do a restructure without a pay cut, right? You can do a restructure with a pay cut as well. A restructure without a pay cut is simply saying, let's keep the contract the same way it is, and we'll pay the bill next year. Let's just kick it down the road. No. These guys better have a pay cut coming, because that was abysmal. That was bad. Now, if you're saying it's not the player's fault, it's the coach's fault, I can respect that opinion. I can respect that opinion. The problem I have, the hole in that argument is Brian Bulaga, former offensive line, he said when he watches the tape, guys, this isn't a coaching issue. He called Homer out one night, and it was hilarious because Homer was like, they made no adjustments to the pressure. They made no adjustments, in the fashion that Homer does, right? Steve the Homer True. And Bulaga said, and I kind of paraphrase him, but he basically said, how many protections do you think they actually have to learn? There's only like 5 or 6 protections we have to learn. There's only so many adjustments you can make. At the end of the day, you got to go out there and block the guy in front of you. And these guys did not do that. So that's a former offensive lineman talking like that, not a dumb redneck who's got a Packers podcast. So there's a quick little deep dive into the offensive line conversation. I'm curious to know, you guys in the comments, how do you feel about the offensive line? Talk me off the ledge. That's what I'm asking everybody to do. Talk me off the ledge. The offensive line is going to be okay. Make me feel better about this situation, because we got some work to do this offseason, especially if we just decide to run this thing back because everybody's quote unquote healthy now. Offensive line is going to be one of the things that's going to hold us back in 2026. But let us know what you think in the comments. Hit like for us, hit subscribe, click the bell icon. We would greatly appreciate that. All right, let's move along to the final topic here. We'll keep this very, very brief. Just wanted to give kind of a quick update. I got to be careful on what I can play in terms of video over on X, because you never know when somebody grabs these and puts them on YouTube or whatnot. And basically what you got here is Bussin' with the Boys tweeted out a video that Micah Parsons, it was from his Instagram story, okay, of him working the rehab. All right. It looks like Matt Schneidman probably put it out first, and I think Bussin' with the Boys had grabbed it as well. I'm going to play a quick little run of it here with no sound, okay, and just kind of so you guys can see it one time through, and I'll pause it intermittently. You see they've got wires hooked up to Micah Parsons, and he's basically on the leg, on the knee that he had the ACL surgery on, right? They've got a band to it to add. I don't know if that's extra stability or if it's trying to make it harder or what, but he's up on kind of a stool. It looks like a stack of Nike stones, like these spacers that they could step up on, right? And he's putting all of his pressure, all of his weight as he steps up on that rehab and ACL. You would see this and go, okay, what's the big deal here, Clayton? Yeah, we knew he was rehabbing. There were several doctors on Twitter going, this is superhuman. So not my personal opinion, but other people who are commenting are going, this dude is way ahead of schedule. So remember when Micah Parsons tweeted out September 1st, he's coming back September 1st. Don't bet against this guy, because I'm telling you, man, based off of how the medical community was responding on X, I mean, you see him fighting to keep balance on that. You see the band shaking. You know how painful that's got to be. And, of course, they got the wires hooked to it and everything, too. It looks like something out of Rocky, don't it? Remember when they had, I think it was the Russian they had that was all hooked up to the machine and everything. Micah Parsons is going to be ready week 1. Barring any setbacks, this dude is not going to be denied. We're going to look up in week 1, and Micah Parsons is going to be running out of that tunnel for the Packers. I'm excited about it, man. I am more confident on this than anything else in that regard, man. I think Micah Parsons will be out there. What do you guys think, man? Let's see what the chat's saying here real quick. We got Greg in the house. What's up, Greg? Greg swings through, says, good morning, PTA crew. A little live show to keep me between the ditches on my way up to Green Bay. Hey, safe travels, buddy. Hopefully the weather ain't too bad out there, Greg. Appreciate you swinging through, man. Appreciate you swinging through. Ron Samble, it is unreal how fast these guys come back from these serious injuries. It's so true, Ron. Like, I think the first person that set the stage for this was Adrian Peterson. You guys remember when he trashed his ACL? And all of a sudden, I mean, he got back in like record time. That's when the bar kind of got raised for these guys. Just like anything else in competitive sports, one person shows it can be done. Everybody, a rising tide raises all ships, right? Every single time you'll get the best of the best go, well, if he did it, I can do it too. That's what makes these athletes so elite and great, obviously. Holmes goes on to say, it is very much superhuman. That's crazy where he is at in the rehab process. That is a medical doctor that watches the show. That's not some random Joe personal experience. This is a guy who is in the medical field who is saying, yeah, this is freakish. So it's absolutely awesome. Now, we don't have as detailed of an update, but we got a tweet or a post that came out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Call him Baton Rouge. All right. Easton Butler threw this out, said update on Zach Tom's recovery post torn patellar tendon. All right. And he just posted a picture. You can see the scar there. It looks like they're rehabbing as well down in Baton Rouge. We're expecting Zach Tom to be ready week 1 as well. We'll keep our finger on the pulse with this one, but you can see the scar, nasty scar, as Zach Tom ended up suffering a torn patellar tendon. And again, what's crazy about Zach Tom playing as good as he did last year, he was playing hurt all year too, for the most part, right? He's just a different player. I'm so glad he got his guaranteed money as well, because that was well earned. When you hear me come down on contracts like Aaron Banks's or even Elton's, right? I don't want it to come across like I don't want players to get paid. Of course I want players to get paid. And Elton's probably made sense when they signed it at the time. Like, hey, that's a solid one. If I remember correctly, that was the first year I was doing the podcast. I remember thinking, I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I think they did overpay a little bit because you paid him kind of almost tackle money to play guard. And I immediately thought they're probably going to play him at tackle. And then they tried it. It didn't work out. They had to put him back to guard. So it does kind of feel like Elton is just a left guard at the NFL level. But I was on board with moving him to center to give it a shot because he played center in college, and it just didn't work out. It did not work out. So maybe I'm as much to blame as anyone else. But I'm okay with overpaying players that are great. You just never overplay players that are good. Aaron Banks, when we broke down that signing, we didn't look up and say he's good. We said, I mean, he's not bad, right? Well, this year he ended up being bad. So we overpaid for above average, I would say. We overpaid for average to above average guard, and he ended up being bad in our system. So now the shift in the focus is at the coaches. Could be. Brian Bulaga says it's not, but it could be. And that's surprising because that's a former player. You think he would, if there was any bias at all, and I don't think he's that type of guy, he would lean toward the player's side of the argument than the coaches probably, right? But nonetheless, there's your update on Zach Tom. He's just throwing a little picture out there. I think all is well there. I don't think he'd be posting pictures if he had a huge setback. I think Zach Tom, there's a good chance he'll be ready to go week 1. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on that once we get into the dead period before the draft. Maybe we'll just kind of revisit and look at some of these target dates that these players are looking to come back from these injuries. But if you're watching this video back later, let us know in the comments, how do you feel about Micah Parsons and Zach Tom? I think they're two of the, if not the most important players on this roster for your 2026 Green Bay Packers. How do you feel about their rehab process? Do you think they're making good time? Do you think they'll both be ready for week 1? We want you guys to take that conversation into the comments for us. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, click the bell icon so you're notified every time we go live in the future. All right, guys, that's all I got today, man. I think we covered a lot. We stayed pretty on point. The voice is starting to go, but greatly appreciate everybody jumping in. Let's hit a couple comments real quick. Rod D. Jens in the chat said, if we keep Jenkins, which I think we won't, okay, I would put him back at left guard. He was better there. There's no doubt about it. He was better there, Rodney. The only thing I would push back on it, just from my perspective, I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong, is he was showing decline even at left guard. I think his best football is behind him. If it were up to me right now, what are you doing with Elton Jenkins? I would go to Elton Jenkins and say, hey, if we can get your cap hit down to $10 million, We'd like to have you back. If you're not willing to do that, we completely understand, and you deserve the right to go get another paycheck. We'll cut you loose. You go to the market. Just understand, if nobody offers you $10 million, come back to us and we'll give it to you. I'd be totally on board with that. Totally on board with that. Will they do that? Time will tell. Would Elton be willing to come back for? In that case, it would be more money. So I would imagine he would be okay with that deal, right? Hey, you go test the market. Let's give you a fair shake here. That's the way I would approach it personally. And you know what? If he goes out there and he gets a $15 million contract or whatever, then cool. All right, you move on. You cut him. You saved. You freed up $20 million in cap space. And now go get Tyler Linderbaum at center. Problem solved. Make two, maybe three draft choices in the draft to try to find somebody to compete at left guard for Sean Ryan, and also compete at right guard for Anthony Belton. Don't just give Anthony Belton the right guard spot. Go get 2 or 3 offensive linemen in this draft. Imagine if you get Jennings Dunker, he falls in your lap, and you get him, and that's your starting left guard. Imagine if a little bit later in the draft you get, let me think here. Let me look at offensive linemen real quick, interior. At guard, let's say that Pregnon is sitting there somehow, somewhere, or Bisaccia is there, right? Or maybe Brian Parker, who's somewhere projecting to be a center, maybe he could play right guard, right? And you pop him in there. Now, we need to look at where they played and what side of the line they played on and whatnot, and make sure that it's where they're most comfortable, and identify, are they a Zach Tom type player that can jump around? But that's the way I would approach that, and create competition at those positions as much as possible. Also, in free agency at guard, I've got Samalo, I've got David Edwards, I've got Elijah Vera-Tucker, Joe Bitonio, Kevin Zeitler, Ed Ingram, and Tevin Jenkins, who, in my opinion, all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those free agents would be an upgrade over Aaron Banks at left guard. No doubt in my mind. Go get one of those guys on the cheap and pop them in at left guard. If you get one of those free agents for $5 or $6 million per, you cut loose of Aaron Banks and you free up post June 1, $18 million. You've now freed up $38 million in cap space between Elton Jenkins and Aaron Banks, which is plenty of money to go get Tyler Linderbaum and one of those 7 or 8 guards I listed off. And then you still take 2 swings in the draft on offensive line. And now you've got more than enough resources if Anthony Belton does end up being a bust. The problem is, history suggests that Brian Gutekunst wants his early draft picks on the field. He said it himself at the press conference. Those young guys need to play. Those young guys need to play. I agree. If they're the best football player on the football field. If they're not, they don't need to play. You need to play your best 22. You need to play your best 11 on offense, your best 11 in defense, your best 11 on special teams, and try to win a freaking Super Bowl and stop playing around and pussyfooting with this. We're going to be the youngest roster. We're outsmarting everyone else. Look how young our roster is, and we're making the playoffs and losing in the first round every freaking year. Add some veteran leadership to this team. That's it. Sorry for the rant. End of rant. All right, but we're going to get out of here. I'm going to go talk to Uncle Sam about paying some taxes, and this is the point of the year where I probably shouldn't say anything, but it's the point of the year where I look up and go, okay, cool. I got to give you guys all this money to watch y'all do the most crookedest stuff. Crookedest, that's a word, right? In that hellhole that we're calling the political capital of our country. Yeah. There's nothing that makes me angrier than writing a big fat tax check to people that steal money from us. And on both sides, this isn't a left or a right. This is both. They're both in that pit, in my opinion. You guys know how I feel about that. Anyway, I better stop with the political stuff. You know how that goes. So anyway, I'm gonna go pay my taxes. That's the moral of the story. Appreciate everybody hanging out with me. If y'all would hit that like button for us, hit subscribe, click the bell icon. I want to thank everybody in the chat. You guys are awesome. Ron Semble, crookedest is a tax word. There you go. Appreciate you, bub. And everybody, the best way to support what we do here, obviously, is to join our Patreon group, patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. $3, access to everything. You get all the draft material, all that good stuff, the cheat sheets. We're going to update the cheat sheets when we get closer to the draft. There's going to be a lot of prospect profiles going out. The combine starts this coming week, so we're going to be diving into that stuff as well. It's going to be a lot of fun, so make sure you guys are up to date over there. So everybody have a great day. My name's Clayton. This is PTA. Go Pack, go.
Here we go. We're out.
Bye, guys.